Hey guys, what's up? It's Collegio. Today I'm going to talk about the Texas Senate race. Democrats are saying that they have the ultimate pickup opportunity because the Republicans nominated Ken Paxton. He's got controversies, he's got scandals, and it's going to be an ultimate pickup opportunity for them. The Republicans are saying that the Democrats nominated this guy, Jim Tallarico, and he's so liberal that there's no chance he could win in Texas, and it's going to be yet another shutout for the Democrats. So which is it? I'm going to give an ultra-realist take on the Texas Senate race because I've seen this rodeo play out so many times in the past. There's a formula for how these things play out, and I'm going to break it down for you. But first, a little bit of background. Last night, Texas Republicans had their runoff for the Senate Republican nomination, and Ken Paxton, who's the Attorney General of the state of Texas, beat out the longtime Republican candidate John Cornyn. Now, Cornyn was viewed as kind of a moderate. His voting record was actually pretty conservative, but he definitely was not in the style of MAGA, and he had some votes that when people thought of Cornyn, they thought of a couple of votes that he had that were pretty bad, especially if you were kind of a conservative in Texas, and that's really what shaped the race. Now, what's the issue with Paxton? Well, he had a bunch of scandals. He was actually impeached by the House of Representatives in Texas. He was later acquitted by the Texas Senate, but then there's alleged fraud going on, and nothing's been proved. But like all of these little things here, little things there. He's in the middle of a messy divorce with his wife. None of these things by itself should be a big issue, but the confluence of all of them at the same time casts some doubt as to whether or not he can win in a contested statewide election, especially when the Democrats are poised to spend $100 to $200 million trying to pick up the seat. Not only to pick up the seat, but also to make a point that Texas is ripe for Democratic pickups. Now, the Democrats nominated a guy named Jim Tallarico. He's a congressman from Texas, not particularly liberal or progressive by national standards, but for Texas standards, he's a pretty liberal guy. And I don't want to get into the specifics of everything. You can go and read it online. But basically, the Republicans have dumped the opposition research book on it. Look at it, and you're going to see a lot of things that are probably outside of the mainstream in Texas. And Republicans are good at running this race. They've done it before. They know how to brand people as liberals or progressives outside of the mainstream, especially for Texas. And Republicans have a good record of being able to defeat candidates like this in the past. Now, when you're looking at Senate races broadly, there are two critical things that you need to look at. Okay, and the first is candidate quality. And what I mean by candidate quality is a candidate who's kind of within the mainstream of what's acceptable, in terms of policy positions and ideology. A candidate who is generally attractive, speaks well, doesn't make a lot of errors, and is able to raise money for his campaign, his or her campaign. Okay, now, at small levels of office, people outside of the mainstream can get elected. People that make all kinds of errors and are Democratic socialists or far-right libertarians can get elected to state legislature. Once you get to the level of a member of Congress, it becomes a little bit more difficult because there's higher scrutiny. There's more negative ads about kind of some of the crazy things or outside of the mainstream things that a candidate on the left or the right might have said. By the time you get to a Senate race or a governor's race, it's incredibly difficult for people who are outside of the mainstream, who are not attractive, who make lots of screw-ups, to raise to that level because there's so much scrutiny on these races. In a Senate race today, the Democrats or the Republicans or the outside super PAC groups can spend upwards of $80 to $100 million or more trying to elect or defeat somebody. So if you have a lot of skeletons in your closet, they're going to come out and they're going to play a role in the campaign. The second thing that's really important in Senate races is looking at kind of like what the national political environment looks like, all right? Because that will have an impact just kind of like on the baseline of how people are going to vote. In off-year elections, in midterm elections, president's party usually performs poorly, almost always, all right? In the last 25 years, the president's party has only picked up seats in like one election cycle, okay? So this is very, very uncommon, especially if the economy is perceived as being bad. And that's doubly bad for Trump because not only is the economy perceived to be poor, but Trump was the guy that people elected to fix the economy. So it's kind of like a double whammy on Trump. So this is not shaping up to be a pro-Republican year. The Republican Party is saying that it is, and they're pointing to X, Y, and Z saying, oh, it's different this time. Trust me, this is not going to be in general. It's going to be a bad environment in general for Republicans. Whether that translates into the Senate losing or the House losing is a different question. But just in general, it's going to be easier for Democrats to win at the margin than for Republicans. Those are the two critical things. So what's going to happen in this race? One thing I'll say is that the economy in Texas is different than the economy nationally. They have a lot of energy. Oil prices are up. there could be a little bit of a boom going on in Texas. So I don't know that the economy question is going to play in quite the same as in Texas. But these questions surrounding Paxton are really, really important. Not because any one of them would defeat him in the general, but because the confluence of all of them at the same time create a narrative opportunity for the Democrats, not to like run a campaign that he did this or he did that or he did this other thing, but that basically they can make up a story about him. All right, kind of a meta narrative about his candidacy, and over time knock the impeachment, knock the SEC investigation, knock the divorce in different ways, and tell a story about this guy that is unsavory to the voters of Texas. Now, what can the Republicans do with Tallarico? Well, this is my big takeaway here, is that in this environment and with Paxton as a candidate, the Democrats had a major pickup opportunity for the Texas Senate seat. The unfortunate thing is that they picked about the worst person as a candidate in order to win that seat. They should have nominated somebody like Fetterman in Pennsylvania. You know, like they should have figured out a way to run a conservative Hispanic Democrat to run. They would win this seat if they did that. Instead, they have a very progressive, very liberal white guy running against Paxton who has a lot of public statements that are just not going to work in the state of Texas. Again, I don't want to get into them, but just look at what the Republican National Committee is saying. That's what their campaign against this guy is going to be. And Republicans in Texas have a very, very good record of tearing down Democrats based on sounding outside of the mainstream especially on cultural issues. So my big takeaway here is that there was a great opportunity for the Democrats to pick up a seat. They nominated the wrong guy. I think that the edge probably goes to Paxton right now because it's a Republican state and because Republican voters usually will get in line with the candidate, whoever that is. But I will say this, candidate quality matters. And if Paxton starts making mistakes, if he starts making unforced errors, if he starts saying stupid things from the stand where he's talking and it gets caught on video, this could be a disaster for the Republicans, and it could be a victory opportunity for the Democrats. Now, I will tell you that history does say that this is possible as a pickup for the Democrats. If you go to the 2020 Senate race in Maine, Democrats went after Senator Susan Collins, a moderate Republican, but their nominee was a far left progressive Democrat, and she lost because the Maine Republican was basically able to paint her as outside of the mainstream. Republicans do this all the time. All right, in 2012, they lost 2 Senate seats by nominating people who are outside of the mainstream and who said crazy things on the stump that were totally unnecessary and totally outside of the narrative. In 2017, they nominated Roy Moore to be their Senate nominee in Alabama, and they lost a Senate election in Alabama, again, because they lost a guy that was not a good candidate, who was not the quality of candidate that you need for a high office like U.S. Senate. So even in a state like Alabama, if you nominate the wrong guy, you could lose. Ken Paxton is not Roy Cooper, and I don't think that he's as bad as the fellows who lost in 2012. But the record is not a good starting place. It's not what I would want to manage if I was the campaign manager or if I were the Republican Party. Again, I think he has about a 60 to 70% chance of winning. But if he makes mistakes, this could be a pickup opportunity for the Democrats. The Democrats really squandered an opportunity to pick up this seat by nominating a guy that was outside of the mainstream for their state. And this is like one of the broader questions is, both sides are so polarized right now that they're not willing to elect moderate in statewide primaries, even when the state goes the other way generally. Like in a state like Texas, Democrats should be nominating moderates. In a state like Maine, Republicans should be nominating moderates. When they nominate people outside of the mainstream, it just makes it harder to pick it up. And then you have less of a majority or less of a strong minority in order to try to push an agenda or stop an agenda in the Senate. So that's my ultra-realist take. Would love to know what you think. Drop a comment and make sure to follow. Thank you.